Okay, so in my last couple of videos I've started showing some fairly cursed DBD clips where survivors are seemingly holding items that belong to killer powers. And some of you guys are really getting quite confused as to what's going on and how this is even possible. Well, what if I told you that this glitch was part of an update that is today known as the buggiest patch in Dead by Daylight's entire history? But how did all of this happen, and what else could you do with this glitch? Well, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the complete and utter mess that was patch 1.3.1d. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Let's go back in time to the early winter of 2016. Dead by Daylight had only been out for a little bit more than 6 months, and the developers were about to take a break for about 2 weeks because of the winter holidays. Before that, however, they released one last patch for the year, 1.3.1d. This patch added new lobby decorations, I guess you could call them, in the form of a few neat little snow patches to symbolize the coming of the winter season. There was also a Christmas Blood Rush event in order for players to be able to earn double blood points during the holidays. All of this looked really cool and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, someone somewhere discovered a bug that allowed you to equip any item, perk, offering, or even cosmetic piece on any character. Now, at first this wasn't a big problem at all, since the glitch was very underground, I guess you could call it. However, a very popular Dead by Daylight content creator at that time, Admiral Bahru, made a video showcasing this bug/exploit and explaining how to perform it. And only in the matter of hours everybody was using it. But how exactly did this glitch function? The way it worked was that, for example, if you wanted to get a killer item on one of your survivors, you would click the switch role button, which by the way is no longer in the game, and very quickly click on the item tab. And see, because survivor items were and still are programmed the same way as killer powers, when the game switched roles it would essentially open the killer item tab, from which you were then freely able to choose any of the so-called items, if you could call them that. And when you went back to the survivor role, there it was. Now, having a killer item on a survivor was by far the least game-breaking thing that this update had to offer. Once you were in a match, you couldn't use the weapon in any way, it just looked weird and confusing. The only way in which this offered an in-game advantage was that if you equipped the Wailing Bell while playing against the raid, the bell would actually be synchronized with the killer, meaning that the bell would normally be invisible and would only become visible when the killer also uncloaked. Though raid had a map-wide uncloak sound effect at that time nonetheless, so this didn't really make any kind of significant difference. Now I want to show you this match right here, where Jake is using Hillbilly's chainsaw and facing a trapper that is playing normally and not using the glitch. See, as I said, killer powers are programmed the exact same way as survivor items, the only difference being that killer powers cannot be dropped on the ground by will. However, what happens when a survivor dies on the hook with an item in their hand? Well, the game forcefully drops their item on the ground. So after Jake died, the trapper actually went and picked up the chainsaw, which resulted in him being able to use it just as if he's playing the hillbilly. For the record, I think this could also be done by swapping items from the ground or in a chest. Now, this is where things start to get a little crazy. By utilizing a similar method to the one for getting killer items on a survivor, killer players could also forcefully use a killer power different from the one of the killer that they were playing as. Most players did this with Hillbilly's chainsaw, since this one was the least buggy out of all of the different killer powers. It basically worked pretty well with almost every killer, but not all of them. For example, the chainsaw had no problems when paired with the trapper or Michael Myers, since they all shared the same animations as the Hillbilly. In this case, the game sort of tries to make sense of what is happening by kind of combining different aspects of the killer's base kits. So for example, if you use the chainsaw on Michael Myers, the game would take the then 6 meter tear radius of Michael Myers in tier 1 and mix it with the versatile nature of Hillbilly's chainsaw. And so you would basically have a killer with pretty much no tear radius that could travel incredibly quickly around the map and insta-down with the chainsaw. However, the chainsaw was a lot more buggy with killers that had different animations from the hillbilly. For example, the nurse could still use the chainsaw, however... Yeah, I can't even imagine what would happen if you tried to use the chainsaw on like the hag. Now, the chainsaw and the trapper's bear traps were pretty much like the only powers, I believe, that could be interchanged between killers, so to say. Since the other ones like the Wailing Bell, Evil Within, the Nurse's Blink ability or the Hack's Phantasm traps would straight up just not work, like they were completely bugged and were entirely unusable on other killers. I think Trapper could at least set down Hack's traps, however he definitely couldn't teleport to them or really do much with them at all. I wish I could show you guys a video on that, since I swear I've seen something like that before. However, I wasn't able to find a lot of videos from this update as a whole, and most of the ones I'm showing have like little to no views basically. Especially the ones I'll put up on screen in a few moments, those have like 90 views. It's really hard to find any sort of media on this in general. Nonetheless, why don't we take a look at what happened when players used survivor cosmetics on killers? This, from what I can tell, is a nurse using Hillbilly's power while having Jake Park's head cosmetic piece. Also, the carrying animation is completely bugged, like the game has just straight up given up at this point. Oh yeah, and for some reason, even though the killer is technically carrying the survivor, at the same time the game still thinks that the survivor is not being carried and is instead currently in the dying state, since it is showing their aura, which does not happen if a survivor is being carried by the killer. Additionally, in the video, the killer literally has no tear radius whatsoever, since the game probably has absolutely no clue what the hell is even happening anymore. Another case of this is whatever the hell this is supposed to be. Also, I'm pretty sure that pallets were bugged as well during this update, since there are multiple instances of players literally just phasing right through them. Now, there is one more thing that we can't forget to mention, and that thing is perk stacking. By utilizing a fairly straightforward and easy to understand method, players were able to use multiple of the same perks in their loadout. So for example, players could use 4 agitations and essentially zoom around the map while carrying a survivor, which could also be done with play with your food. But probably the most infamous perk stacking combo of all time is the 4 times Unrelenting, which back in those days also reduced successful attack cooldowns, similar to Save the Best for Last. This combo essentially allowed you to literally 2-tap survivors, as your cooldown was basically non-existent. Another example is Quadruple Shadowborn, which completely messed up your field of view when blinking with the nurse. Also, sorry that all of these videos are pretty low quality, they just don't exist in a higher resolution unfortunately. Speaking of perks, if you're wondering what happened if you used killer perks on survivor or survivor perks on killer, most of them didn't do anything. For example, Decisive Strike on Nurse was entirely unusable, similar to how most offerings would also behave when used in this manner. For instance, you weren't able to force who the killer was by using a Splinter offering as a survivor, however there were a few exceptions to this in regards to aura reading perks. When killers put on perks like Bond or Empathy even, this could actually reveal the survivor's aura to them, meaning that you basically had wall hacks on all survivors throughout the entirety of the match as a killer. This buggy update as a whole was generally very funny and lighthearted, however, you know, there will always be people who suck the fun out of everything. Well, yeah, I guess that was it. We went through pretty much everything that there is to say about the buggiest update in Dead by Daylight's entire history. If any of you guys have any sort of other information about this patch that I missed in this video, please share it down in the comments, as I would really appreciate it. Nonetheless, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to let me know by leaving a like, and also I would be glad if you considered subscribing as well. Anyways, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!